everyone. Welcome to
Hello.
Golden Talkies again.
Hello. Man, it
It's so,
always it always starts with us talking over each other, doesn't it? Because we do our
it
mark and then we
does.
both I say okay and you say hello, but it's fine. You know our viewers are
It's
used to that.
cool.
Our viewers, our
We're not
listeners.
very yeah. Look, if there's anything our listeners are used to, it's us talking over each other.
That's true. It has happened quite a lot, but it's fine. It's
We're
fine.
practicing.
Mhm.
Anyway, Duncan, what's special about today's episode?
Well, since it's our big third episode, we're doing three films, sort
Whoa,
of.
that wasn't a coincidence at all.
No.
Yeah.
So the main film for this week is Out of Towners from
hmm
1970. But the choice
Wow.
the choice for this week was between Out of Towners and a delightful film called Watermelon Man. Now we'll go
Yes.
into Watermelon Man later, but we both felt, Jamie in particular, but we both felt that it was maybe not the easiest film to discuss in depth
A
due
bit
to its
spicy.
content. It's a bit spicy, so when I go through, I'm just going to kind of rush through my notes in it and not try and I don't know. I don't really know what the sort of overall setting on this kind of thing is, but it's a little bit spicy. So yeah, the main film is Out of Towners for this week, and Jamie watched a remake of Out of Towners as well, didn't you?
I did in
From
1999. Starred Steve
1999.
Martin and Gwen Stacy or something like that.
Gwen
Not Gwen Stacy.
Stacy, is that not the one from Spider-Man?
Someone named Gwen.
Gwen, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So so we'll talk about the Out of Towners 1970 as our main film, and then
hmm
well, I'm sure you'll discuss the remake for it, and then I'll do a little bit on
Yeah.
Watermelon Man. See what Jamie
Mhm.
thinks of my synopsis and comments on it.
Cool.
You should watch it. Well, we'll get into what recommendations and stuff later, obviously, but yeah, you should watch it, man. All right, so
Okay.
should we start with the historical context and then get into the
Why not?
film? Okay,
Carry on,
so
Romeo.
once again, I was using TakeMeBack.to. They've still not sponsored
Yeah.
us, despite this being our third episode. 3 weeks in a row now, we've mentioned our company, and we've got no sponsorship. So
We have 10 eager viewers who would
exactly,
love to partake in your
how
product.
many views did our last one get? Well,
Uh,
let's not. I mean, it
8,
doesn't
I
really
think.
matter. We're doing this for ourselves, you know.
Yeah.
But we did get a comment. So we got a comment on our last one that said
Wow.
very funny or something. But then I looked at the
Yeah.
viewer statistics, and I don't think anyone watched past like 10 minutes into it.
I
So
certainly didn't.
I wonder what he was commenting on. I don't know. Anyway, the historical context from TakeMeBack.to. So the only song that I recognized on the US top 10 was "Let It Be,"
Oh, yeah.
which is
Again.
still in the top 10, but it was number 10
Fair
this
enough.
week. I can't remember what it was the last
God,
two
these guys are
weeks,
bleeding
but
successful.
yeah, the Beatles, man. Who knew?
Yeah.
The UK. Can you guess what the UK number one was?
Something by the Jackson 5 again?
No, it was Back Home by the England World Cup squad for the third week in a row.
Again?
Let me just quickly check. When was the World Cup? Do you know?
Of
Um,
course I don't
it
know.
was held on the 31st of May, so from tomorrow, in 1970. So I don't know if that's going to fade out. I can't. They got knocked out in the quarterfinals, I think it was. We talked about it in the first week. Anyway, so that was still England World Cup squad. We're still number one in the UK, and probably will be for another couple of weeks. Number two was still "Spirit in the Sky" by the Guardians of the Galaxy band. So
Yeah,
that is the joke that keeps on giving. That's the third
it
week in
is.
a row that we've used the Guardians of the Galaxy band joke. Who actually
Mm-hmm.
sang "Spirit in the Sky"? I've just realised I don't even
I
think I
actually own
can.
the fucking. Oh, wait, I can look it up right now because it's on my phone as part of the Guardians of the
All
Galaxy
right,
sound.
have a look. Have a look. And the
Uh,
the other one that was in top five was "House of the Rising Sun" by Frigid Pink, from same as last week. So the UK
oh,
top
really?
five was pretty much the same as last week. The US one might have been as well. To be fair, I didn't really um, do that. And then I was looking at Life magazine as usual.
Mm-hmm.
These magazines are very lucky, Life, Time, and Sports Illustrated, because they're the ones that are featured on TakeMeBack.to. And as someone that's incredibly lazy, it's very easy to just go on that website and click in those magazines rather than looking at headlines. So Life magazine was very Vietnam War heavy this week.
Mm-hmm.
It featured, a bunch of articles on like when should we pull out and this happened and remembering people who died, all that stuff.
Norman
So
Greenbaum wrote "Spirit in the Sky" or
there you
sang
go.
"Spirit in the Sky" just before we leave that.
That's right. That's right. That's a good song, to be fair. I can see why it
Yeah.
was in top five. Yeah. So Life magazine, very Vietnam War heavy. It's not really relevant to this week. I feel like we've talked about Vietnam a lot,
Yeah.
and we don't really know anything about it, so it's kind of like pointless to keep talking about it. But obviously, it was happening at the time, so it's useful to keep in mind. Time magazine had an article about some black people that were killed in the south of America a few
Wow,
weeks
that's not
after.
relevant at all.
Not relevant at all to this week. That was a few weeks after Kent State, and apparently it got a lot less like coverage and national
Uh,
thing, and there was a lot of outrage about that. So yeah, I mean that's pretty sort of poignant and relevant today.
yeah,
I
it's
don't
nice
know.
to know that we've advanced so far in the last 50
It
years.
is. And then do you know what else was in Time magazine?
What?
There was an article about how to keep control over crowds without killing people.
Wow.
It was literally it was titled like how to control a crowd without killing or something like that.
So is
Um,
this just for like, say, a police officer who's
no, it's about the
on his
military
way?
because
Oh,
obviously a lot of police forces bring in the National Guard when the protests are really bad.
mm,
But I mean the police obviously are violent enough in America as we
yeah.
know. But yeah, it's sort of like how to get soldiers that are trained to kill to use other tactics first before jumping straight to that.
I'm sure
Basically,
they'd love doing that.
I clicked in Time magazine and I was like, damn, this is like today,
Yeah.
50 years. Like it's crazy that it's still going on, but I guess that's the US for you, isn't it? They're
hmm
pretty
Pretty
crazy over there.
backwards.
Pretty backwards. Yep. And I'm sure when I get into talking about Watermelon Man, we'll
Oh,
I don't know. Maybe I don't want to start any riots or anything. Well, there is a riot in that film. Anyway, we'll come to that later. So that was all I had from the historical context. There wasn't really anything that jumped out at me. Sports Illustrated, I didn't look for it, but it didn't really have anything
fair enough.
majorly that was relevant. So yeah, we can move on to the sort of general
Good old the
stuff
out of towners.
before we go into your plot bit. So it came out
Mhm.
May the 28th, I think.
May 28th is what I heard. Yep.
Yep, so that's 2 days ago from when we're recording, and 3 days
Yeah.
from when. Spoiler alert: we're recording this on Saturday. This is a late one, isn't it? In
Yeah.
the grand scheme of things, we're
We're
pretty.
recording this at 10 p.m.
Yeah, I don't know. This week I've felt kind of.
Sleepy
I don't know.
cast.
Yeah, well, I'm having an energy drink right now, my second of the day,
All right.
because I did not sleep well last night with the hot
No, I
weather
didn't
we
get
were
to
having.
sleep until 4,
Mm,
and I got up at
you
what at
said.
noon. I
Yeah,
think
well, I
tomorrow.
got up at like 10:30 though. I didn't get to sleep. I don't know, 3, 4 something as well. I couldn't. Man, it's so warm.
I
It's hard.
think tomorrow night I'm just gonna like stay up through it and then
Yeah.
try like
That's the way
reset.
to do it. You could stay up through it and watch the comments come in on our video from
Of course.
all our international viewers.
We're doing a premiere, right? That's
we
what we do.
I was tempted to set premiere. I don't know if that would get more viewers if people like feel like it's something that they're watching live. You know, it almost feels more like a live stream.
I
Anyway,
don't really watch those.
what
Like
premieres?
like with premieres, I always like I don't sit up and wait because you
Yeah,
have that YouTube video. But like, what happens is that like they upload it and then like it's like a 2 hour long video, and I'm like there at like 37 minutes in, and I'm like, oh, like, there's all this stuff happening, and I'm not part of it. I'm like, let's come back later.
yeah,
You
and
know?
watch the full video. Yeah, it's true.
hmm
So yeah, I'm pretty like high energy, but I might suddenly crash because I'm
Cool.
on
I'm pretty
Iron
low
Brew.
energy, but I don't think I've ever been very high energy on this guy.
No, I mean
So
I'm not. I'm usually not high in energy at all. But I'm on the Iron Brew Energy at the moment.
sweet.
That's our other sponsor, right?
Can I actually say, right? This is
Yeah.
like a very niche opinion, but I feel this is the time and place to share it, right? So, like 4 or 5 years back, they had that Iron Brew Spicy. Do you remember it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was genuinely my favorite, like, soft drink for a while. Like,
Really?
it is so fucking good. And then I think it's just because the local corner shop doesn't replace its stock ever. But it seems that whilst there was away for Christmas, Iron Brew did a sort of ginger-based Iron Brew,
Oh yeah, that is nice as well. Do
and
you
like,
like
yeah,
it?
I love it.
Oh
I
yeah.
like it a lot. It's still like new Iron Brew, so I don't like it, I think, as
Yeah.
much. I like
Yeah.
that old one, although that may just be nostalgia. But that drink is pretty good.
It
Buy
is.
it.
There. Thank you. That was a message from our sponsors, Iron Brew. Get your
The
Iron
Bar
Brew Energy now.
Corporation.
High
Buy
caffeine.
any bar drink apart from pineapple aid, because that's gross.
I what? Mate, that's my favorite one.
I know it's your favorite one. It was a pointed jab.
Oh, you got me. Nah, the limeade's the worst one or stuff like that.
Actually, I've never had the bubblegum aid. I don't think
Oh,
anyone.
it's
I don't think I've ever met anyone.
it's all right. Anyway, should we go back to the film?
All right, Out
Uh,
Towners.
okay.
About a couple.
Wait,
Their names. Yeah.
do you want, what? Yeah. Okay. Go.
All right, The Out of Towners. It's a film. It was made in 1970, as we have
Yes,
discussed.
May the
It
28th.
stars Jack Lemmon, who usually appears again opposite Walter Matthau,
Does he?
who is not in this film. But I was looking it up just out of interest, and it turns out Walter Matthau wasn't in a single film in 1970, despite having a
Really?
blossoming career. But yeah, he was in three films in 1969 and three films in 1971.
Was he was he in rehab or something?
I don't know, maybe.
What's his name? Walter.
Dark. Walter Matthau. He was in Hey Dolly, which is the
Don't
film
know
that
this
sort
guy.
of pulled the Hollywood.
Oh, I don't know if I kind of recognize him. I think.
He was like it was one of those guys who was in
Okay.
everything. Yeah.
Right. So, Jack
But
Lemmon
in
was
terms of
in
actually, yeah,
Jack
Jack
Lemmon
Lemmon.
was in Some Like It Hot.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that?
Of course I have. Yeah.
You have. I've not.
Yeah. Really?
No. No.
Surprised. It's pretty all right. Although I
Okay.
haven't seen it for a while.
He's in that, and he was also in a remake of 12 Angry Men. I saw.
Ah, how did that compare?
I don't. I've not. Well, sorry. I mean, as in, I saw that he was in it.
Oh, you
I've
saw
not
it.
seen the remake.
Yeah.
I assume it's bad. I feel like I've heard it's bad. I don't know. I feel like 12 Angry Men probably benefits from the time period. You know, the black and white and the
Oh yeah.
cinematography being kind of interesting for the
Hmm.
time and stuff. I don't know how well. I think it was made in 1999, which is the
Uh,
same as
the
the
same. Yeah.
remake of this very film that we're watching
I guess they just
this week.
liked remakes then.
Yeah. Well, they like
Anyway.
remakes now as well, don't they?
Yeah. Well, no, I feel you don't get too many like straight up remakes. It's usually reboots or sequels.
Yeah, reboots are a lot more common nowadays, for
Like
sure.
like the 20-year later sequel, I think is like the most
Hmm.
common thing.
Yeah, like Avatar 2, which is
Yeah.
going to end up
It's gonna happen eventually.
being that
One day.
one day. One
Be
day.
just as
Can't
successful
wait.
as the first one.
Yeah, probably not. Do you remember seeing the first one?
I never saw the first one in cinemas.
Really,
I
I
saw
saw it in cinemas. My mum took me.
DVD.
My mum took
The
me. I
way it
had to
was
go
meant to
to
be watched.
I had to go to the toilet halfway through because it was so
Uh,
long. But yeah,
I'll be
it's
honest, I didn't like it at the time, and I was I think 10
I don't
when I
really
first.
remember it. Yeah, I watched it when it came
And I
out.
feel that
So
has to be the ideal age to watch that film. It doesn't seem like a film which I'd like more now that I'm older.
no, no, I don't think so. Yeah, I watched it probably the same age, I guess, or maybe a bit younger when it came out. And yeah,
Would it be
it's
fair to say that 3D is a sort of failed trend at this point?
well, you know, 3D is something that like has a resurgence every like 20 years or something in
That's
film.
true, I suppose.
So I feel like
Uh,
it will come back. 4D. Have you seen any films in 4D?
I just the thing is like 4D. I know that if I watch a film in 4D, it will completely ruin the experience. So it needs to be a film that I'm not actually interested in watching for the
Yeah,
film. You know, I just need
I
to be there for the 4D.
I saw
Oh, shoot, there we go.
Aquaman
Yeah,
in
see, that sounds
4DX.
ideal.
It was ideal. It was quite uncomfortable. They have this thing that like punches you in the back anytime
Yeah,
someone
that
gets
sounds
stabbed.
horrible.
It was horrible. So like the chairs moving was pretty cool. There was a bit when it snowed and they like turned a snow machine on and it was really loud. And it was supposed to be this like really emotional like romance scene, but all you could
Yeah,
hear was
and
like the snow machine like and like all this like foam was raining down. And
yeah.
then you get punched in the back every time someone gets stabbed, which is pretty unpleasant. But the rest of
Mm.
it's pretty cool. Like every time they went underwater, there was a little like scoosh of water, and there's a bit where they like go down a long slide thing, and you like the chair moves with it. That was all cool. So it was mixed. It was mixed.
It just
Obviously,
it does sound like it's just a film, but someone like randomly
y-
punches you every 10 minutes, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
really
yeah.
immersive.
Yeah, you really need it for a film that has a lot of movement, like camera
Mm.
movement and people going down slides and flying and stuff. Like that's the kind of thing where it works.
Sort
I
of like a
would
theme park ride, which I would dare say would
exactly.
better serve your needs if you were going to a 4D film.
Yeah, but if you, I mean, if yeah, they could probably. I wonder if people are going to start making films for that more mainstream. Because obviously, like currently, if you want to see a film that's like made for that kind of thing, you have to go to the theme park.
Yeah.
But with like Cineworld starting to build these 4DX screens, I wonder if like people are actually going to make films like mainstream films for that, or like I guess experiences rather than films. I
Well,
don't know.
if you remember back when we were young, and I'm sure they still have them, so I'm not sure why I had to qualify it with that. But they had those like car things like in a lot of public places, and like you paid £2, and then went
Yeah.
inside, and it would fumble around and be like a shitty CGI video of a roller coaster.
Yes, those were so
Remember
good.
those? Yeah.
I fucking loved
Uh,
those.
so just those, but with more video quality, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, I could see it happening for sure.
Mm.
Or 4D is just a fad. But either way, it's fun. It's cool.
I can't imagine, like at least 3D. I can see someone like trying to make the case that like it increases your immersion or something. I
Yeah.
cannot possibly imagine someone making a legitimate case for
No,
4D being useful.
absolutely not. Okay, so back to Out of
The Out
Towners.
of Towners, right? It's about a man whose
Whoa,
name.
you've not talked about Sandy Dennis.
Oh, Sandy, she's plays his wife, right?
She plays Gwen.
Gwen. Yeah. So it's about a
Um,
man. His name's George. He
yeah,
has a wife. Her name's Gwen.
that's
These
right.
are our two characters, baby.
Do you know who else was in it?
Billy D. Williams, I noticed. Very minor role.
Yes, that's how I was about to say. Lando Calrissian
I
was
was
in it.
going to bring it
Did
up.
you?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Were you gonna bring it up later?
I was, but it's fine. We
Okay.
can
Did
talk
you
about it
did you
now.
notice? I didn't notice him. I only saw it when I
I
was doing
did.
the
I think because
cast.
I was watching on Amazon and I was like fiddling around with the mouse, so it showed me on the X-ray maybe.
Ah, and you're right.
Uh,
Yeah,
but like,
makes
yeah,
sense.
it's kind of cool. It's sort of like we had Harrison Ford the first week, we had Marcus Brody the second week. I still
Yeah,
haven't learned his name.
I don't
And
know. Captain Horny, you mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
Captain Horny. I know I've got Billy D in a dramatic role as the lost and found guy, really showing
Oh,
off
is
the.
that who he was? Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
he's like the only black character in the film.
Well, the guy that serves him the burger or serves him the food is
Oh yeah, that clearly wasn't
nice.
Billy D.
No, no, I know that wasn't, but I'm just saying
Uh,
there were other
no, no,
ones.
no.
I
It's
guess it was those two
uh,
really. Just
yeah. Okay,
right.
so The Out of Towners is about a man who goes to New York to have a job interview with his wife.
Yeah.
He
Not
feels that
the
the
interview's not with
shoe-in.
his wife. He just takes her with him.
Yeah, he takes her with her. Yeah, the interview is not with his wife. Although in the remake,
Oh yeah.
I'll get to later. But yeah, so they go to New York like for the weekend.
Yeah.
He's very excited. But he's a very wound up for.
Oh,
He's a
he's
big boy.
very flustered. Do you know?
Very, yeah,
I I I got this like mad anxiety watching this film. Like the
yeah,
whole
exactly.
time, I was because my dad is a lot like that when he travels.
Well, here's
Like
the thing.
he's
This film
very
reminded me.
excited, and he like drags
Yeah,
he drags me and my mum about, and like he like needs to be everywhere, and it was so triggering for me. Like
yeah.
I hate to use that word, but like it just like I was so tense watching the film
This
throughout.
film viscerally reminded me of traveling with my grandpa, which I think
Right,
is the same deal.
it's
Where
like
it's
that.
just like if you've ever traveled with someone who's like incredibly uptight and really worried about things like
Yeah,
constantly,
I
and like
wouldn't
to be
watch it. I
emotional,
wouldn't watch this film
it is yeah, it is that sort of film.
because it like when I feel like
That unrelenting.
when I travel I'm like
Yeah.
super chill. Like I
Mm.
got stuck in Japan. Did you know this? I got stuck in Japan overnight
No,
because
I
my
didn't
flight got
actually.
cancelled. So I was
Oh,
on a flight out of Japan at like midnight,
yeah.
and it got cancelled or it got delayed by like 3 hours, and it got cancelled finally at 3 in the morning. And
Ugh.
like I was like, oh right, okay. And I was really worried because I had to get back for uni, but I was kind of like, well, it's cancelled now. So I just like followed all the queues that were going on. I just followed the queues. I like picked up my luggage, went followed queues. Literally, I was in queues for like 7 hours or at least,
Ugh.
talking to like luggage people and airline people and stuff. And obviously I was stressed, but I was also like, well, this has happened now, and like nothing's gonna change from me getting like flustered or whatever. And there were all these people like shouting at these random women and stuff. And all the people that were helping us were from like Air Japan or something,
Yeah.
rather than the airline, because I was meant to be flying Qatar, but they weren't there at that time of night because they'd all gone home. So like it was
Mm.
all these like poor like overnight people that were having to help us, and I was just like, well, they're doing their best, like you know what I mean?
I know exactly
And
what
it
you
was
mean.
just and yeah, you see these people that just get like super angry and super thingy, and that's exactly what the main character is like in this.
Yeah. My
Yeah,
personal style is that I am very uptight when I'm traveling, but I'm usually traveling by myself if it's like my responsibility.
yeah.
And so what tends to happen is I get very stressed, and then like if I go past my limit, I just sort of settle into quiet despair.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I definitely went to quiet despair. I mean, don't get me wrong. I definitely am the sort of person that like keeps checking that I've got my passport like every two
Yeah.
minutes,
Oh
and
yeah.
like you
I'm
know,
sure if I had.
I look up at the gate sign like every minute to check that nothing's
Mm,
changed. But there's like a difference between that and like getting all
yeah.
flustered. You know,
I'm sure if I was responsible for someone else's travel, I would also be that insufferable.
maybe
Uh,
maybe it's because
yeah.
I've always either been on my own or someone else has been the responsible one, the
Yeah.
person responsible for it. That I've kind of had this nice middle ground. But yeah, I just found the whole film like really tense and really like
Mm. Yeah.
anxiety
So
like
it's a very
raising.
tense film. Anyway,
Yeah,
so it's about an advertising executive. He's got a big interview for a job in New York. You know, this is it's like vice president of ad sales, I think is the title. It's
yeah,
swanky. So he and his wife go to New York for the interview, but they got their plans. They're gonna have a lovely evening. They're gonna go to this lovely restaurant. They're gonna go to a lovely hotel. Gonna relax, breakfast in bed. He goes to the interview fresh at 9 a.m. start, and
Hmm.
he's shooing for the job, already approved.
That's right.
So they go on their plane, and I feel the first thing to talk about, because we are discussing the 70s, is how nice the airport and the plane are.
Oh, absolutely. Like
Disgusting way.
they walk
Yeah.
in and they're like, we're here to check in," or he's more like, "Oh, we need to check in. We need to get on a plane." Blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. The woman just takes a bag and they're like, "You're boarding now," and then they just
Yeah.
walk onto the plane
They're chill. It's
and
horrendously
they can
surreal.
smoke. They can smoke on the plane.
Yep.
There's a bit where they're like, "Oh,
Uh,
you can smoke again."
the plane actually looks comfortable, like chairs
Fairly, yeah,
by.
yeah, definitely.
Uh, the dinner looks like nice. They have like proper trays and
Well,
that.
ish.
Nice-ish. They call it
Yeah,
stale chicken. It still looks pretty nice compared to what you get these days.
yeah. In many
Uh,
cases, yeah.
I realize like this is a decent bit past the golden age of air travel, but it's pretty clearly still at the tail end.
Yeah, yeah. It looks pretty nice. And
Hmm.
it's the flight's only like an hour or 20, right?
Yeah, yeah, because they're going from
Ohio,
Ohio. Yeah, it's
which is
still Ohio.
fictional. Well, Ohio's
Yeah,
not
that place
fictional,
doesn't
but
exist.
Twin Oaks is a fictional place,
Mhm.
as far as I can
Ohio
tell.
isn't real, Duncan. That's just what they're.
Ohio isn't real. That's right.
Mm. But yeah, so it wouldn't be that long a flight. Anyway,
No.
New York
Anyway.
is locked in. Something I have
Uh,
never in my life heard as an
no,
excuse for a plane
neither.
not being able to land.
I've been to New York twice, and never have I been fogged in the plane.
I feel like we live in a pretty foggy city, like generally,
Do
and
we?
I mean, as foggy places go. Uh,
Yeah.
and like, well,
Okay.
like, okay, I'm pretty sure I have landed in fog before. It doesn't seem
Yes, that's
to
right.
need to lay a flight for.
Yeah.
But anyway, they circle for a while, and he's like, crucially, he tells his wife that they can't have any food on the plane because they'd like
Yeah.
spoil their meal. And
At
she's
their
like, oh,
fancy restaurant at
can't
eight
I just have
thirty.
a coffee, George? And then he's like, oh, okay. But then she's like, no, we're landing. He's like, no, we're not landing. We're circling. And he has a
Yeah.
little
Which
repartee,
is
and it keeps going and going and going. And he won't fucking sit down.
oh my
Uh,
god. He's just the worst guy.
yeah, like this entire film is an exercise in really wanting the main characters to shut up.
Yeah, and do you know I don't want to spoil the ending, but I was thinking the whole way through, like, okay, so he's being this asshole to everyone, and he's being really
Mhm.
annoying, but he's gonna learn his lesson, and then he just
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah. Fuck it. Let's just talk about the ending now, because this is what bothered me most about the film
Yeah,
as well, which is that like, so throughout the film, there's these problems, and like some of it's luck, but they are almost entirely problems of his own creation.
either of his
Um,
own creation or certainly,
Easily avoidable, if nothing
they're
else.
either completely natural problems, or they're problems of a group of people that he's not complaining to.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like everyone that he complains to is not to be blamed for
It's
anything.
completely yeah. So like just briefly running through it, like they go on a train and it's full,
Yeah,
and then like can't stay in their
which was
hotel.
horrible, man. Have you ever
Yeah,
been on a train that's that busy?
yeah, it's
Because
not
it
nice.
sucks. It sucks. But
Yeah,
at the same
like yeah,
time, it's
quick,
not anyone's
yeah,
fault.
no, quick rundown. Like they can't go to the hotel, and he's like, "Oh, I
Yeah,
hate you." This is the manager's fault specifically. And like everyone they meet is like, almost everyone they meet is like super nice about like the whole thing. He's like in a
yeah,
position. They're
really
like, "Well,
helpfull.
look,
You can sit
sorry,
in the
our hands are
lobby.
tied here.
Yeah,
We'll do what we can." And he's like, "No, this is stupid. I'm going to sue you all.
yeah.
Fuck you.
He's got a
Is this
list.
just doing this
The
to me
list,
because I'm an out of towner?"
the
Title drop.
the list was pretty funny.
Yeah, the list was throughout the film. He keeps writing on down a list of names of people he's going to sue.
Yeah,
Uh, so he's not a pleasant guy. And then at the very end of the film, like the speech, his wife gives a little speech where she's like, I hoped that you said that you'd say no to that job because you don't want
uh-huh.
to live in a place where like they stack people on top. Like basically, the moral of the film is that they are too good for New York
Yeah. Which
when they are both horrible, and
they're
New York is
horrible.
nothing but lovely to them. Really, like
Yeah, New York's really nice, and I love New York.
I
It's
like
one of my
New. I
favorite
appreciate this
cities.
is 1970s New York, and therefore a very
Yes,
very different
of
place.
course, of course.
But
I mean, you say everyone's nice to them. They do get robbed
yeah.
twice.
Do get mugged. Well, although at least the first time they absolutely deserve it. Like there comes a
Yeah,
point of mugging where it is your fault. Uh,
yeah,
but like yeah, the moral of this film, despite how disgustingly unlikable they are, is that like New York is bad. They're fine.
yeah. And
And it,
the guy that wrote it, is like a New Yorker through and through.
yeah,
Neil Simon. He was born in
I
New
know.
York, died in New York, like lived in New York all his life.
Like I don't know, maybe like the whole point is that like the speech is supposed to be like flimsy or whatever, because like at least the play as written seems for almost all of its runtime to be about like the flaws of the main character and like to a
Yeah.
lesser extent his wife.
I
So
mean,
like maybe
his wife was not bad though, because like
no, she
it,
doesn't do anything that bad.
his wife didn't really want it, and she's really helpful. Like she puts up with him being like a total asshole
Yeah,
the whole time. She tries to calm him
she's
down. Like all the good plans that they have are like her plans.
yeah,
He
but
and he's just like a total asshole.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but like, so it's not impossible to me to maybe see that like maybe the real point of the film is that like it's their fault and like they're just too oblivious to realize. But like
Yeah.
the way the film sells the climax really makes it feel like that speech is what you're supposed to take away from this.
Yeah.
The problem
I
is
was
with New York.
just okay. So, I guess this is kind of relevant to the remake as well, but it kind of reminded me of a far worse Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh yeah, I've
Have you seen
honestly
that film?
I haven't. Sorry.
No. Okay. So it's got Steve Martin in it as well, like
Mm,
the remake, and I'm sure you'll talk about the remake. But so Steve Martin's kind of like a similar character in that he's like this like businessman that's blames everyone else and stuff. And then he
yeah.
comes across what's the guy called? I can't remember his name. The guy that plays Uncle
Oh,
Buck.
John Candy, isn't it?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah, the guy that plays Uncle Buck, and he's this like lovable, like chill, innocent guy that like tries to help him as much as possible. And
mm,
Steve Martin learns his lesson, and at the end of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, he like invites Uncle Buck guy into his home.
yeah.
And that's like the big change in the main character is he's realized that like even though he's traveling through this like hell thing, stuff keeps going wrong. He's like made a friend and whatever. And I was really
Mm,
expecting a similar thing to happen in this film, where
yeah.
like he's an asshole all the way through, but he gradually starts to learn not to be an asshole. But he doesn't
No.
at all.
They learn nothing throughout the song.
No.
Uh, like it's
So there's a bit when he says, "Why doesn't anyone help anyone?"
yeah.
Even though loads of people try and help him, and no one and people he doesn't deserve any help because he's an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like if you just spun the last 10 minutes of this film a little differently, it would make complete sense.
Yeah.
Like
How would you
but
do it?
otherwise, it's honestly I think if you just didn't play like the swelling music over the wife's speech and you just changed the cinematography a little bit
Right.
and like I don't know, maybe just made it like a little, maybe add like a small like even just a little joke towards the end to like show that like again that is they're the problem.
Yeah.
Like immediately was bam done. Solid cohesive argument.
Yeah.
Because like obviously, this is definitely a joke comedy where you're really laughing at the main characters, and like there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with having a comedy about unlikable people who don't learn anything.
Yeah, but it
Um,
needs to be done better. I don't know. I don't know
yeah.
how to describe it, but I mean, I laughed twice in the film, the whole film. I found two bits
Oh yeah.
funny. So
Hmm.
there's a bit, there's a bit when they're in the hotel room, and she phones
Yeah.
for room service, and they're like, "You can't get any hot food because there's a convention on." And then he
Yeah.
says the line, "I hope it's a mortician's convention because I might kill someone." Um,
Good.
and that's about 10 minutes before the end of the film, and that was the first time I
Yeah.
laughed. And the
Hmm.
second time I laughed was when they're on the plane home, and then the Cuban hijackers like hijack the plane to Cuba,
Yeah.
and then she's like, "Oh my God!" again. That was the second time I
Yeah.
laughed.
That's the
So
that's the closing gag as well.
yeah, so the two times I laughed were within like the last 10 minutes of the film.
This is
That was it.
definitely it's definitely a film where like the main joke is the way the characters talk. Um,
Yeah, her voice was pretty funny to be fair.
yeah, like there's a very like the recurring joke throughout this entire thing is that like they will say like the woman will say like, "Hey, X is happening," and then they'll be like, "Eight," and they're like, "What? X is happening? Why?" And she'll be like, "Because X is happening." Like there's a lot of repeating lines as
Yeah,
jokes.
yeah, and
Um,
they just weren't funny.
yeah, it's the sort of thing where like throughout this film, I was watching it, I was like, there's someone who like this is their exact sense of humor, and they will
Yeah,
fucking love this.
yeah,
But like, if that is not your very specific jam,
hmm
then this isn't going to be for you. Like, you need to find this kind of dialogue funny. Like,
exactly.
apparently, this Neil Simon's most of his films are like written as plays and adapted.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah. So this one was supposed to be a short play, actually, a
yeah,
section of a play,
yeah,
a
and then like there were too
vignette.
many locations, so he had
Yeah,
to get a film. and like you can definitely sort of it's very play-ish to use
Hmm.
the technical academic term, and that the comedy is very much in the dialogue. Uh,
Yeah, but
and to
also I
be
don't
honest, I
have
think
it
I would
funny
find it a lot funnier if it was maybe being
on a
performed
plate.
in front of me. I
Maybe.
don't
Yeah, I don't.
know.
I don't know. I don't know, man. I just didn't find. I find it stressful and like not at all funny until the very end, and like I don't feel like anyone learned their lesson.
Mm,
Like they kept making just awful decisions.
yeah, I
I
mean,
guess
like I
the
say,
the
I'm
only
okay with a film where no one learns anything. It's just when
yeah,
the film
but
seems to support a wrong conclusion.
exactly like so I think the only thing that was kind of redeeming was like the guy that was on the flight with them.
Mm,
There was like, oh, they get redirected all the time. I'm just gonna fly in the morning, and then they see him
yeah,
in the hotel, and he's like, oh, I just got the flight here. You know, that
yeah.
was
Like I
funny
say,
to
the
me
one this
because that
film's very consistent in making it very obvious that like these problems are of his creation.
exactly,
Like
exactly,
there's another bit where they're being escorted in like a police car after they've been mugged.
yeah,
And like the policeman says, like, okay, look, we've got a liquor store robbery. I'm sorry, I can't carry you the rest of the way. I'm
yeah,
gonna have to drop you off here. And he's like, no, I know my rights. I'm
yeah.
not
I'm
do
gonna,
you. I'm not getting out of this car. He's like, well, look, okay, buddy, it's your funeral. Okay, I can't force you. I don't have
yeah,
time.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then like he stops and he goes into the liquor store robbery, and then the robbers get in the car and drive off with them. Like, and he
Oh,
goes,
it was
oh
fucking
my
hilarious.
god, we're getting
Yeah. Oh my
kidnapped.
God. They're getting- oh shit. Yeah. There's just
Yeah.
so much stuff like that.
hmm
Oh,
Um, but
what
yeah,
else?
so I suppose to just go through the list very quickly of things that happened to them. New
Yeah.
York is in. They go to Boston.
Yeah.
There's 20 minutes to get a train, but their bags are missing. Billy D. Williams tries to do what he can,
Yeah.
can't do anything
But they're
for
like,
him.
no, fuck you.
So they go to they go get a cab. He doesn't have the correct change for a
Yeah.
cab. He's like, just mail me the money,
The money, and then
sue
he
you.
gives the guy his full address, and the guy gives him
Yeah.
his full address, and like all this stuff.
hmm
Yeah,
and then like they go on the train. It's the wrong train, but like if
yeah,
they really hurry up, they can get the right train again whilst it stops for a bit. And it's like okay, so they go back. It's the same cab. The train is full. They have no food. Our hero has a stomach ulcer, which gets
yeah,
worse throughout the entire time.
yeah,
In New York, there's a transit strike on, which is very relevant for the time, obviously.
yeah,
And sanitation strike. They go the wrong way. He walks back. They get to the hotel, but they've missed their booking. If they just wired ahead, they would have kept the room for them, but they didn't.
yeah,
And the manager's like, look, I'm sorry, we can give you a room in the morning. You can stay in the manager's office for now. He's like, no, you're treating us bad because we're out of towners. I
yeah,
know. You're getting sued. And he's like, oh, you
yeah.
can't
Adds him to the
gotta
list.
bluff with these people, honey. You gotta show them you're willing to walk away.
Yeah,
And there's no other rooms anywhere. And then the guy's like, hey, I have a room.
yeah,
Just come with me. And he's like, oh, okay, sir. And then they get mugged.
yeah,
And then they go to the police station to report about getting mugged. The police station are like, okay, like we'll just do what we can. There's a homeless shelter like over here
yeah,
to help people. You can stay there. Then they get kidnapped, as they said.
yeah,
Then they end up sleeping in Central Park. Then they get mugged again in Central Park.
yeah.
Then they eat leftover Cracker Jack.
Gets stolen by a dog.
Tooth. They get stolen by a dog. He breaks
Yeah,
his tooth on the Cracker Jack.
yeah.
He
Oh, by the way, that was pretty cool.
what?
He like started. You know how he said that he was whistling, but they
Yeah.
actually like. I don't know if they added it in post or if he like deliberately like pretended to whistle for her or whatever. But that was kind of
You
cool.
have you ever seen Arrested Development?
No.
There's an episode where one of the characters, Job, eats a candy apple and breaks his tooth and it starts
Right.
whistling, which is the same gag.
Right. But it
so
was.
it's
I just found it
coincidence.
kind of cool that they actually did it.
Yeah,
Like it added a kind of.
yeah.
You
He's
know, as
whistling
much
on
as
his
much as
S's.
I didn't like the film, it did feel kind of real almost. You
That's
know,
one of the things I was going to bring up. Is that this film's very, very grounded and like.
maybe it's too real. Maybe that's why I didn't like it because like once to go back to Planes, Trains and Automobiles, which you haven't seen, but I'm just gonna spoil it. There's like a bit when they're driving, and then their like
Yeah.
car blows up, and then they keep driving it, and it's this like completely burnt out wreck that would never drive. But there's like
Mhm.
a bit of humor in like the ridiculousness of the situation. Whereas maybe one of the reasons this one was like so like triggering and like stressful and anxiety ridden was because it like everything that happened to them could absolutely be real. You know,
Yeah, like so I this anxiety thing for like me at least watching it is that like I actually have no fucking clue what you would be supposed to do in New York in the 1970s if you got your wallet stolen.
yeah.
Like, because like
Well,
everything else, I was like, they don't have ATMs. What are they gonna do? How do you get money?
You
Uh,
go to the citizens whatever thing that she talks about,
yeah.
the
So well, that
travelers
was like a charity thing. So
charity
like,
thing. Yeah,
I guess like the thing you have to do is like you go to the bank physically and you ask for money because that's what my grandma used to do.
yeah.
Like
Imagine that.
it,
Imagine go to the bank physically to ask for money.
yeah. Um, but like this does once these characters don't feel unreal. Like the man's
Yeah,
exaggerated a bit for comic effect, but as you and I were both saying, he's definitely like
yeah. He reminds us of real people that
reliable.
we
Yeah,
like know well.
it's
Yeah,
not that inconceivable that the like at least something like the events of this film could potentially
yeah,
happen to someone who just like if they got mugged, maybe they would end up like sleeping in Central Park.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Exactly. And then
anyway,
get
in the
mugged
scene
again.
after this in Central Park, they find a crying child.
They do.
And the wife refuses to leave him, and George's like, "We need to worry about ourselves." And then George suggests that they mug the child and take his money so that they can use it to get him to his
Yeah.
interview on time.
And he takes him into the bush and says in a very creepy
Yep.
way, "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to look for money."
He does, in fact, actually mug the child after a small argument.
He
Yes.
does. And then someone calls for the Centre Park Rangers. The only other thing I've seen the Centre Park Rangers in is Elf. I don't know about you.
I genuinely have no fucking clue that they existed. Like,
Did you think they
I,
were just a thing in Elf?
I never saw Elf,
You've
but
not seen
like,
Elf?
no, I haven't.
Bro.
Fellow
Right.
fan.
We'll do that for a Christmas special in however many years. I don't know. Elf came out in 2000 or something.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't remember seeing the Central Park Rangers when I was in New York.
No,
Either.
I was in Central Park this last Christmas. They weren't there.
Yeah, they weren't there. Where
Not as
where were
big.
the Rangers?
Maybe there's only like two of them.
I
They
don't,
travel.
well, in Elf, there's like 10 of them. Man, you got to watch Elf.
All right, right.
Anyway,
I'll get.
yeah,
So yeah, they run away from the Rangers.
yeah.
And
They
then
run away from
I
the
bring this
Rangers
up just as like
straight
a
to
weird
Celtic.
thing, but like they're sort of hanging out on the street, right? And Jack goes into this big speech about how he's not going to let New York defeat him. He's going to get to his
Yeah,
interview on time.
yeah.
And then there's like a whistling sort of sound, and he's like, "What's that, honey?" And she's like, "Ah, get off!" And he
It's the
gets
gas
off the
mains.
manhole cover, and it fucking explodes.
Yeah,
It was fucking like what 20-pound manhole cover
yeah.
lands right next to him. Which is
Apparently,
the only accident. I'm going to talk about that as well, but this is the only accident throughout the entire film in which it would have been legitimate for him to sue,
yeah.
and he doesn't talk about it at all.
No, and apparently,
According to Wikipedia,
yeah. Are you about to say what I think?
although it says citation needed, it does say
Yeah,
that
I was
it
gonna
actually
say,
happened,
yeah.
which is terrifying because that could have easily killed someone.
Yeah, well, no, it says that. It says that it could have killed him. Someone they looked into it, I think. Like the Actors Guild or whatever. And like it could have killed the actor.
Yeah, like that's horrifying.
But it does also say citation needed. So
Yeah, so like this may just be a made up thing. No.
let me see. Let me look it up. You keep.
To be fair, it does seem like kind of part of the plot because he does have the ringing in his ears.
Oh no,
Afterwards.
it is obviously part of the plot. But
Yeah.
I don't think that it's saying that the manhole cover actually exploded without them knowing. I think what it's saying is that
Oh, like the stuff was
the
too dangerous.
filmmakers actually blew up the manhole cover and it wasn't supposed to land like next to him. That was
Right.
I think.
It's
Let me look
supposed
it
to, like-
up. Let me look it up while you.
Alright. So then they go to church, and the church is busy for filming, so they aren't allowed to pray. He sues them because he needs his right to. He doesn't sue them. He threatens to sue them because he needs his right to practice his religion. And then I think they finally get back to the hotel at like a decent hour, and they have the room prepared for them as promised. And he goes to the interview, and we don't know if he gets the job or not. He comes back, and then his wife gives the speech about how New York sucks and they're too good for it. And then they go home. And then the plane to home gets hijacked by Cuban. Oh,
yeah.
I forgot. They get a ride from like a Cuban emissary
Yeah.
at one, and
He's
then
very
like
nice guy.
he takes them to the embassy,
So-
which is being protested for something about Che Guevara. That I couldn't figure out if the protesters were for or against him.
Against
They-
him, I think. Was Cuba a big thing at this time? I thought that was kind of
Oh, definitely.
over by then, or not over by then, but was it still that big a deal?
I mean, I think it was still pretty contentious throughout the Cold War for very obvious reasons.
yeah,
I
that's
imagine
true.
it wasn't too protest free at any point.
Okay, right. Here's a thing on IMDb about the manhole cover.
Mhm.
The blast was much stronger than anticipated, and instead of only lifting the manhole cover a few inches up and away from the hole, it threw it several feet into the air. A few seconds later, it falls hard in the ground, very close to Jack Lemon's head. The actor was then hit in his left leg when the cover bounced, and although startled and in pain, he stayed in character. That shot was used in the final film.
Ah, cool. That's
Yeah.
very George Lucas was filming the whole time thing.
Yeah, it is,
That
isn't
sounds
it?
like a much more like credible version of the story compared to the Wikipedia one. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So you thought that like the gas main just
Well, from
actually
what
exploded,
Wikipedia was saying, it was like
and
there was a genuine horrifying
and
accident with the gas main.
he just stayed in character despite
Yeah.
despite the gas main blowing. No, but either way, it's still pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
So what else? Is there anything else I want to say? Oh, so there was another cool detail as well as the essays.
Mhm.
They come out of Central Park and they're like, oh, the sanitation started back up again. It's like on a newspaper, and then in the background you can see a sanitation crew.
Yeah.
Like little
It's very
details like
nice.
that were nice. I like that.
Like this film, in case we haven't made it clear already, takes place over the course of the remake says 24 hours. This film clearly
Right.
takes place over like a very similar time frame in that like
Yeah.
it starts with them leaving morning
Well,
and then
less. No, they leave
at
the
that time
evening.
the
They
next
leave the
day.
evening.
Yes. No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the evening. Sorry.
It,
So
it,
yeah,
it takes place
it
over one
ends-
night. It's like 12
Yeah.
hours. But no, the
Um.
booking's for 8:30. It,
Yeah.
it takes place over like 18 hours or something, probably.
Yeah. It takes
Yeah.
place over within one 24-hour cycle.
Yes.
We should say.
Indeed.
So it's kind of neat like that. You do get a sense of like in the background of a city that lives.
Yeah.
The best character in the entire film is, of course, the guy who wires ahead, as we've already mentioned.
Yeah, he's the best.
Appears in the airport and is like, I'm going to wire ahead. And then he
Yeah.
appears later and he's like, man, I had a great night's sleep. Glad I wired ahead. Bounce, bounce.
Yeah. How did you get here? Oh, I flew in on the flight from Boston. Like, yeah, do you know
Lovely
what it is?
time.
It's
Yeah.
not only is he like so flustered, but he just doesn't stop, which I feel
Yeah.
like is another thing that like I'm used to traveling with people like that. That like they don't stop and think.
Yeah.
Whereas like I'm the sort of
Like,
person that if I get like confused or not sure what's going on, I'll like stop and I'll go right. Like what's going on? Where do I need to go? Whereas some people just like march ahead. Like they need to be like the first person, or like they
yeah.
need to. Like it's kind
Like,
of clear that he feels that he needs to be the first person on that
yeah.
train and like the first
Like,
person
to be
to do this.
clear, like, it's not like he never thinks of wiring ahead or anything. Like, even in, like, the first scene where, like, trains come up, his wife's like, we could just wire ahead. And,
Yeah.
like, they'll understand. He's like, no, they won't understand.
Yeah.
This is a position of
He-
responsibility. They need someone who
Exactly.
gets to places on time.
Even though he's a shoe in. And then the other thing is he's really worried about like how his clothes are going to look, but they look pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, this is,
Considering they both spent a night in Central Park, they look kind of
Yeah.
alright.
like, he's kind of lucky because it's the 70s and they're brown. So, yeah, it's, like, a very nice suit. And, like, I guess it's the 70s, which is, like, when people just wore suits all the time.
Yeah.
And it's also brown again because it is the 70s, so
Yeah.
like it doesn't show the dirt very well. And like I wonder if my dirty 2020s lens can truly appreciate what a suit is supposed to look like in the same vein as someone who wears one all the time. But it looks fine to me.
Yeah, looks fine. And her outfit's fine apart from her shoes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
they're pretty lucky considering they camped out and got soaked and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
Are we just going to ignore that there's going to be like a break in the audio there where your Wi-Fi
Oh, I
died?
was trying to be like seamless.
Okay.
But,
I
sure.
think it'll be
uh,
pretty clear. Well, it's fine. Cool. What
my
else?
Wi-Fi broke down. Sorry.
Is there anything else you have to say?
About
do you
this
wa-
film.
Do you want to move
I
on
read
to
notes,
the?
and yet, it's a surprise. Like the thing is, this film is just like one conversation style for an hour and a half. And like I say, if you love it, it's going to be for you.
Yeah.
If it isn't,
Sandy Dennis, who played Gwen, had more than
Yeah?
20 cats when she died.
wow, that's sad. I don't know. Maybe she also had Safi. I didn't interview it.
What?
Oh, yeah. At the very end, during the interview, like as a sort of final punchline, the guy's like, "Hey, I didn't expect to see you on time." So there you
Yeah,
go.
that's hilarious. Hilarious.
Okay, we're back again.
We're back
Hey,
again.
This will be just like the first episode. We're going back to our roots for the first
Yeah,
episode.
only this time hopefully we have it. I don't think we're going to miss anything. It's just going to be a bit choppy because Jimmy's microphone doesn't seem to
Yep.
be... it's your turn, to be fair. One of my... my microphone sucked the first episode, now it's your turn.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So, yeah, there's not much else to say about the film, I
No.
guess.
It had some... There were a few shots that were kind of peep show-like. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Like a couple
Uh,
first person. That was...
if
it
you
was
like-
the same... It was the same in, like, the last film, wasn't it? Or was it the one before it,
No.
where they were...
Oh, you're
Okay.
thinking of Getting Straight.
getting straight, yeah, the cinematography was not too indifferent.
Yeah, I would consider this to be a perfectly fine film. It is one
Yeah.
comedy. If it's your type of comedy, it will be your jam. If it's not, it will be torture.
So what? Yeah, it
What I
was
want
kind of
to
torture for me.
emphasize before we start talking about the remake is two things
Right.
very particularly. Firstly, as we mentioned earlier, it's a very grounded film,
Yeah.
um, which is part of its charm, I think, and part of what it is.
Yeah, it's very realistic, very real.
Very realistic, very
Yeah.
down to earth. The second thing that I really want to emphasize that I've now forgotten. Shit. Uh, no. It's gonna leave. Um,
Wow. Someone
yeah,
doesn't have all their
no.
notes
Oh,
written
that's
down.
right. It's unique. It's a pretty
Right.
unique film, I think we'd say.
It's a pretty unique film. Now on to the remake.
Yeah. So the remake,
But
right?
wait, no, should we do our ratings for this?
Oh yeah.
So I would rate it. I might even rate it. Don't watch it. For me
Well,
personally.
I'm gonna
Um,
say from the perspective of a recommendation, I would say watch it if it's on and see if it's for you, because you
yeah.
very
Okay.
very
Yeah.
quickly if it is for you or not.
Yeah.
And if it is for you, stick with it. If not, it's not got any surprises up its sleeve. It's not going to shock you with anything
Yeah.
new.
You'll know very
Plays its
quickly
hand early.
if it starts triggering you, right from the start because it's like people you travel with, unless for some you've got like some sick thing where you like being reminded of
Stressed.
that kind of thing, then I wouldn't. I would put it don't watch. I honestly I would put it just don't watch. But that's just
Mm.
my as in I would if I was to recommend to my past self I would say don't watch. That's
Okay.
kind of how I'm thinking of the recommendations. But I do agree with you that you would know pretty quickly. But I certainly would not go out of your way to watch it.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I wouldn't pay for it.
in any way,
Maybe that's me.
or even look for it.
All
Are
right.
you saying look for it? Are you giving it a free? Like if it's free, watch it.
Yeah, just if it's on. If it's on TV.
Yeah,
Uh,
because remember, just to remind people of our rating system, our lowest rating is don't watch it at all.
yeah.
Our second rating is if it's on TV or if someone is like, I'm watching this, do you want to watch it with me? Our third rating is if it is free, watch it. Our fourth rating is buy it, and our fifth rating is buy the special edition with all the bells and
Bells
whistles.
and whistles.
Oh, we both said bells and whistles. That was good.
I know.
Nice.
Anyway, the remake, 1999.
Remake. Tell us about it.
New Millennium is going along. It's that year that Prince described in a song.
Yep.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4 takes place during this year. I do not know any world events that happened during the year 1999 other than the New Millennium, which by definition took place in 2000.
A couple of cool dudes were born.
Yeah, the first episode of Futurama aired.
A couple of cool dudes were born.
In this sordid time, as Duncan was trying to dox us, uh,
Well, now that
someone
you've
decided
okay,
to remake the film Out of Towners. I do
yeah,
not know why. This version of it stars Steve Martin, and he's not called George anymore. He's called Henry. This makes no difference to the plot whatsoever.
right,
Um, so this is a very different film in a lot of ways. Firstly, it does not take place over 24 hours. It takes place over like twice that long. And I know this is very petty, but for me that annoys me.
right,
So this film, they show it's about the two have their last kid leave for college. He goes to London as a sort of year abroad thing, which is quite weird because there's a scene where Steve Martin's like, those European women are very like, very saucy and all that sort of thing, and then you realize they're talking about London, which is like, that's not Europe.
not Europe anymore,
No,
because
but it's
you know,
definitely not cultured. Um,
yeah. Well, for Americans it is maybe.
Maybe I don't think I've ever met an American who went to London and was like, yes, this is just like these are the same.
No, that's true.
Anyway, so the kids leave, and it's about sort of the pressures in their marriage as now the kids are gone, and there's sort of nothing to fill the void.
Yeah,
Which is sort of okay, because part of the things that I think we were hinting towards before in our sort of discussion of the original is that it does kind of suffer from the characters being unlikable. Like
yes,
that's the source of the comedy. It does kind of
yeah,
stop you from rooting for them. One of the reviews for the film says very specifically like the film would be better if they were like a more likable couple that were out of their
yeah,
depth. And
yeah,
this film definitely
yeah.
goes in that direction. So also Henry's been fired from his job, which gives a bit more of a threat, as it were. But he's
Right.
lying to his wife about it. He's saying that he's still employed and like this is just a whatever thing.
That's always good.
He goes to New York. He goes by himself, but his wife comes along as a surprise. There's now
Right.
jokes about air travel being bad to show how far we've come.
Right.
Um, and like the film focuses a lot more on like the issues in their marriage. The whole like moral is that like
All right.
just getting older doesn't mean they can't grab a hold of life anymore. They're going to go on this crazy adventure together and rediscover what made them fall in love in the first place. Wink.
Right.
Um,
So it's very different.
very different. No, it's sort of weird because Henry is a very different character from George mostly.
Right.
Like his character flaw is that he's a fuddy duddy, as it were. And like most of the time, whilst he's Steve Martin, so he's just mostly
Yeah.
sarcastic about things rather than getting
Yeah.
wound up about things. But then every now and then, like just like a joke or some dialogue from the original film will sort of sneak its way back in, and
Right.
it will feel like a weird lurching shift of tone as he starts to become incredibly wound up. And
Yeah.
like,
Right.
um, so yeah, so they go on the plane, and that scene mostly plays out the same. But they have after they miss the train, because it's the '90s, they get to have jokes. So they say, "Hey, let's go get a car rental," and they have jokes about car rentals being bad.
Right.
You know, it's the '90s, baby.
Cool.
And that's what people find funny. And then like the car has a sat nav, so they get some good comedy gold out
Oh,
of
I
it.
bet they do. I bet
Oh
that's
yeah.
great.
They go over a bump, and the sat nav changes language.
Of course it does. Oh
Uh,
man, great, great,
uh,
love it.
So, and like later, there's a scene with sex addicts because it's 1999. That's what the people are talking about.
Right.
Um, so they go to the hotel, and it's run by John Cleese. He's the manager.
Yeah, I saw that in a couple of photos.
Hey, Duncan, guess what character John Cleese is actually doing in this movie?
Uh, John Cleese? Is he? Is
He's
he?
doing Basil Fawlty, very
Oh, is
specifically.
he? Is it?
It's Basil Fawlty, but in an actual position of responsibility. Uh,
Nice. Do you know, I don't like Faulty Towers.
oh, don't you?
Not really. No.
Bad.
Man, I've watched a
Tried to
couple of them
treason.
and it's really not my thing.
All
Do you
right.
know
Well,
have I told you my John Cleese story? My claim to
you met
fame.
him once, right, at the
I
festival?
directed him to the toilet, Jimmy.
Yeah.
I
Very
showed him to the gents. Well, technically, I told his daughter where the gents was, and she then told John Cleese who went to the gents. But yeah, I've directed John Cleese to the toilet, so that's pretty cool.
Right. Anyway,
Right.
I'm bringing up John Cleese partly because it's the only interesting thing about this film, but
Yeah.
secondly because one of the more direct shifts of tone in this film, which is that people actually are an asshole in this version of New York.
Right.
John Cleese especially.
Right.
Um, so,
Is he American?
no, he's British. He's doing his
Yeah.
British,
He's one of those like.
and then
Yeah.
like occasionally goes into French when he's like being very
Of
posh.
course. Yeah.
But like in this version of New York, whilst a fair number of their problems are still their own fault, it's definitely much more these people are just unlucky.
Yeah.
Main reason they do get mugged for being idiots. This time the mugger pretends to be Andrew Lloyd Webber and they believe him.
Does
Uh,
he look like Andrew Lloyd Webber?
no, he's like
J-
Danny DeVito lookalike.
Oh right. It would be cool if they had got Andrew Lloyd Webber to like.
They get Rudy Giuliani in this scene, in
All
this
right.
movie, as himself. He plays the mayor and like he unveils this like big statue in Central Park and like the lights go up and then it turns out they're fucking in public. And that's like a big ooh moment.
This honestly, this sounds infinitely better.
It's not, but to
No.
keep so just to give you some
Okay.
more space around the thing, they have a daughter who lives in New York, right?
Right.
One of the reasons they have money is because the daughter has maxed out all their credit cards because she dropped out of medical school without telling the father, and the mother was
Nice.
use your dad's credit card to get yourself set up.
Classic.
And then like there's not the same sense of rising threat throughout this film. Not
Right.
threat, but there's not the same sense of panic. And once it's gone, you really notice that the film changes massively because like the main
Yeah.
plot isn't that different, but because it's so much more focused on like the conflict of their marriage,
Yeah.
and not so much about the external pressure of like like they don't mention what time the interview is until like the last third.
Right. Okay.
So you don't get the same sense of like a ticking clock. There's a
Yeah.
lot more like quiet-ish scenes where like they just talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not quite the same sense of like escalation, and I think the film becomes a lot weaker for that because it starts to feel a bit plotty at some points. Which I think of others. Like the other unique set piece I would say for this, which I also want to talk about because this film is a lot less grounded than the other film.
Okay, yeah, I can imagine with Steve Martin and the time
Yeah.
period.
So as a
Yeah,
sort of example of that, in one scene they're trying to get to the hotel room for food, and again they can't get in because they don't have money.
yeah,
So the wife seduces LA producer type, and she's like, give me the key to your room. I'll wait for you to get back.
right,
And then like she and the husband go in and they order room service on his tab, and he comes
nice,
back unexpectedly, and like the husband has to like hide behind the curtains.
right,
She sort of does
awesome.
a wacky thing where like she's still trying to seduce him, but she can't like do anything with him because her husband's right there and he doesn't want to. So like, crisis, and persuades him to leave. And then like he sees the room service coming, and he's like, "Who's that
Yeah,
for?" And, like, oh, I'm being ripped off. He goes to the thing, like, "Oh no!" So they climb out the window, they climb
right.
down hotel off the sign. Like the husband sort of hangs off the
Oh,
neon
this
sign
just
for a
sounds this
bit,
sounds so much better, man.
and then
Like
like it breaks.
comparatively,
And then like it breaks a little and sparks fly everywhere and power for the whole hotel goes out. It goes
of course it does.
whoa
Of
and
course
lands
it
on the
does.
balcony outside the manager's room, and it turns out that John Cleese's character is a cross-dresser.
Of
Uh,
course he is.
so he's singing along to a sort of fun Raining Men like song. I can't remember
Right.
the song.
Talking about crossdressers briefly.
Yeah.
Oh fuck, I forgot the name of the film. What's it called? Let me look it up. So I watched this film, um, when I was still up in the city where I go to university.
Mhm.
Um, watched this film, which has Robert De Niro in it.
Yeah.
Fuck, what was it called? Robert De Niro Stardust. Have you seen
Okay.
Stardust?
Nope.
So it's a children's film. I don't know why we were watching it. But he plays this like so he plays a like a sort of steampunk pirate airship captain who's just like
Cool.
big tough guy. And he's like classic Robert De Niro, like, hey, I'm a fucking tough guy, blah, 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 whatever. But then he's a cross dresser. So
Mhm.
like he locks his room and then he like puts on a bunch of clothes, and it is the weirdest thing to see Robert De Niro like in a dress, sipping tea with like a British accent, like just acting incredibly camp. It's like the weirdest thing. It was funny, but it was just like so
No.
like bizarre for him.
Uh, it's
Anyway,
weird that they're all British. To be fair to John Cleese, he's actually very into it. He's believably having fun in that scene. You know what?
yeah,
Credit to
well,
him.
like so Stardust is not a good film, I don't think.
Hmm.
But it's really good. That bit, like Robert De Niro really gets into it, and you can tell that he's like just
Yeah,
enjoying himself, which is always nice to see
it's always nice to
in
see.
films. So I imagine it's
Um,
similar with John Cleese.
yeah. So after that, hijinks ensue. The having sex in public thing with Mayor Giuliani I talked about happens.
Yeah.
Go to Central Park, and then Steve Martin gets arrested for urinating in public because it's the 90s and this is a hot button issue in New York.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, like if you
Cool.
watch old sitcoms, they have a lot of jokes about people getting arrested for public urination,
Right.
which
Yeah.
it's a
You know.
victimless crime. Uh, so he ends up in jail, and then like he says, "Oh, I have a headache." That's his thing. He doesn't have the ulcer that George has. His thing is
Right.
his headaches.
His headache.
Uh,
And is his headache medicine in his bag that he
of
doesn't
course
have?
it is.
Yeah.
Um, and
Sweet.
then they don't focus too much on the lost bags in this one either.
Right.
And then like the guy in the prison cell is like, "Hey, here's an aspirin. It'll shut you up." And then it turns out the aspirin is a drug.
Of course it is. Nice.
uh, so there's a lot of wacky humor. It's not clear what drug it is. Uh,
Right.
I'm not even sure if it
It.
is
I don't think it really
based on a real drug.
matters in
He
films, does it?
just yeah,
They
he
just
just
take
gets very
drugs and
horny.
wine and yeah.
Um, and then meanwhile, the woman, our hero, blackmails John Cleese into giving them the bail money and putting them up in the hotel bedroom. In a
Right.
wildly funny scene where a man is worried that he'll be arrested and have his life ruined for his sexuality. The 90s, baby.
90s baby.
Um,
Cool.
that's basically the end of the film. They blackmail John Cleese and he solves all their problems. Uh,
Nice.
and then he gets to the interview and he's like, "Hey, I've got your new tagline, Bucko. It's only in New York." Uh,
Right.
then they're like, "That's a fantastic idea. No one else could have come up with that. You're hired,
Right.
Bucko."
And then he says, "No, I want to go back to
Nope.
Ohio."
In this film, they stay in New York.
Oh.
because they're embracing their new lives and embracing themselves as new people. So it's a
which
completely
is
different ending.
fine.
Day in New York, John Cleese rolls his eyes and goes, "Oh, I think I'm beginning to like them." And the closing gag is that the three of them go see a play together with the daughter in it, and she bows, and then
Nice.
the wife is like to John Cleese, "Are those my earrings?" And that's the end of the film.
Well,
Uh,
to me that sounds better.
it's
Um,
an
for me
unbelievably
personally,
generic
yeah,
comedy.
it does sound very generic.
Like
So
even speaking as someone in 2020, I was
yeah,
feeling like, oh my god, this is I've seen this so many times before, and like that's just it's a very specifically 90s thing. So I can understand why someone in the 90s would find it like physically painful to
yeah,
watch. But in terms of comparisons, like I say, I think the strangest things that happen to it is that the comedy is no longer based on dialogue. There's still like some dialogue based stuff, but not as strictly. There's a
yeah,
lot more physical gags or like wackiness,
right.
like scene where like they're chased by a dog or that aforementioned thing where they're climbing down the hotel. Lots of stuff like that. A bit of the old cringe humor when they talk about their
Oh, of
sex life
course.
in front of the sex addicts. Um,
Awesome.
and then like obviously the story has a more of an emotional core and that's about their marriage. But as
Yeah,
I say, I feel that does kind of slow the whole thing down in a way that I realized because I after I watched the original, I was like, I think if they made the characters more likable and
yeah,
that would make for a better film. And they made them more likable in this one, and I realized no, it wouldn't. So it turns
right.
out I know what I'm talking about, and all remakes are bad because that's the way it is. Frankly,
Cool. Nice.
um, don't remake stuff. Let it be.
Let it be. Nice. That was a nice
That's a nice time, yeah.
tie-in. Cool.
So that's my opinion
That's your
on
opinion.
the
Well, I would
Thomas remake.
say you should watch Planes, Trains and Automobiles. I watched it again recently and it wasn't as good as I remember it being, but it's still pretty entertaining and there's like an actual character development. You know, it's similar in terms of like the
Yeah,
travel stuff, but like it's someone traveling alone
yeah,
and like they make a friend. Like it's a good film. I'd recommend it.
yeah. In fairness, in the
Over.
'90s one, there is a character arc. It is a painfully obvious character arc that they articulate at every toss and turn.
Of course they do.
But just short of saying like, "Wow, I'm facing a dilemma. Time for my character resolution."
Yeah.
But if in terms of my rating, I'd say avoid it honestly because it's just not.
Okay.
Unless you're really a big John Cleese stan.
Or
Uh,
Steve Martin fan?
no,
No.
there's like to be fair, John Cleese in the film is doing a good John Cleese. Steve Martin in the
Right.
film is doing a
It's not.
mediocre Steve Martin.
Fair enough.
Um, Also, it's 1999, so like, how many good roles did John Cleese have left by that point?
He's still alive, man.
yeah, yeah, but
I showed him to the bathroom.
he's not as good anymore.
Okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Okay.
Um,
So is
anyway,
that as
do you want to
done?
talk about? Unless you have more questions about the remake.
I kind of want to go into Watermelon Man.
I sort of sensed you were, so I was kind of hurrying through it.
Okay.
So
Well, no. I mean, if there's more to talk about, there's more. You know. But
I'm not sure there is more to talk about.
I've got
It was
3 pages of
generic.
notes here.
It was less grounded. It was a worse film for it. That's
Right.
my opinion on the Out of Towners remake.
Cool.
What's the original? If for whatever reason you got a gun to your head and you have to decide between the two.
Yeah. Or don't watch either. Just get shot.
Hmm. That far.
Okay. Watermelon Man.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Oh man, that means I need to talk now for ages.
Yep.
Better get my throat clear.
Have
So,
fun.
Watermelon Man came out in 1970. I don't know what day actually. I didn't check that.
It's also the 28th.
Also 28th, the same day. So you could have had a choice between these two films.
Yeah, you'd have been
Um,
sitting in front of the theater and you'd be looking at these two posters, and you'd be like, "Huh,
which
which
one do I
one?"
want to look at? What's the poster like for Out of Towners?
It's like them on a train and like they're leaning their head out, sort of like a dog would, but they don't have the tongue, obviously.
Right, which doesn't. Oh yeah, yeah, right. You're right. I recognize it now. So the poster for Watermelon Man, is like split in half, and it's got on the top there is a black man,
Yeah.
um, who is obviously a naturally black man who is going oh golly and smiling,
Mm-hmm.
and then it says his white bread world just turned upside down, and then beneath that there's someone that looks almost like someone in whiteface,
Yeah.
which they may or may not be. I don't want to spoil it. Down like upside down. So The film was directed by Melvin Van Peebles, who's still alive. He's 87 years old.
Cool.
I don't know his other films, but apparently this was his only studio film. It was by
Oh yeah,
Columbia
I heard
Pictures.
he went on to make some like independent stuff instead. Like he was
Yeah,
offered studio films after this because I think this one was quite successful,
I
and
think
then he
so.
turned it down
Yeah.
like a big fool.
So, it was written by a guy called Herman Rocker or Roucher or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was written because he had a bunch of friends who claimed to be like very liberal and forward thinking, but he noticed that they all still held like racist ideas, not very
Yeah.
far below the surface. Like they were still pretty racist. And
Mm-hmm.
so the studio wanted to make the film, but he insisted it had a black director for obvious reasons because it follows a black man.
Yeah.
So it stars Godfrey Cambridge, who
Mm-hmm.
is a black man who, for the first 15 minutes of the film, is in whiteface. Um, and by whiteface, I mean like full white body. Like he's completely
Yep.
white with like blonde hair and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which is a bit. It's a little bit weird. Like you can tell that he's very obviously black.
Yeah.
Um, like he's very dark with the white. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of weird. Um, so yeah, there's that. The studio wanted the reverse, so they wanted to cast a white person and then have them in blackface for the majority of the film.
Yeah. And
But
he wasn't cool with that.
thankfully, Melvin said no to
Mm.
that. Godfrey Cambridge was acclaimed by Time magazine in 1965 as one of the country's foremost celebrated, and then there is an N word, the less bad N word,
Cool.
comedians. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously he was quite a popular African American comedian at the time. So I'm just going to go through my notes. I've got them all written down.
Sure.
Feel free to jump in if there's anything that jumps out at you as something that you want to hear more about.
Thank
So
you.
the film starts quite similarly, actually, to Out of Towners, with like an establishing shot of the suburban house that this guy lives in, and
Mm-hmm.
it's got the same like annoying music of like like the comedy 1970s comedy music that's just like really annoying and
Oh
not.
yeah, slightly weird just to lurch back, but like the 1999 remake has like a really present soundtrack in a way that's surprising to me. It was Quincy Jones who did the original Out Towers, which I was surprised to see.
All right.
But the 1999 one's a lot more generic and like bouncy. Uh, that was just like there's a lot of da-na-na-na-na-na sort of
Oh
stuff.
yeah, nice.
Yeah,
That's
I need
cool.
to touch myself more. Keep going.
So yeah, so the first thing you notice is that the white face really is like quite something. Like he is like it's like when you put like paint on, it's like really
Yeah,
shiny.
is it
So
just
he's
like just like chalk stuff
yeah,
basically?
he's like super shiny and like smooth as anything because it's just like painted on his skin. But
Mm.
I guess it's kind of all right. Like he looks like a very light-skinned black person, I guess.
Mm.
I can see why you didn't want to talk about this film as the main one. It's quite hard to sort of jump around it without saying anything racist. So within 2 minutes, you see his naked ass.
Great.
He's
That's what we
lying
come for.
down on a sunbed that he has in his home. He's got like a private sunbed. So you see him like fully nude on that, and he walks about fully nude. I'm not really sure why. And then he goes into the kitchen, and his wife and kids are watching TV. And on the TV, there are a bunch of riots by black people. And he says, oh no, his wife says, they are getting very dangerous.
Mhm.
And then they go into a discussion about civil rights.
What's his
Um,
opinion on it?
his opinion on it is, well, I think he's not like racist, but he's kind of like, they shouldn't be so violent or whatever.
Oh,
It's
of
just like,
course,
yeah,
yeah.
these guys are violent and all that kind of stuff. So it, like immediately jumps into that. And then there's an absolutely hilarious bit where every morning he races the bus. So there's a bus stop outside his house,
Mhm.
but instead of getting on at that bus stop, he runs comedically past three other bus stops and down some stairs to try and beat the bus, like to get it at that bus stop at the bottom of the stairs.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely hilarious because everyone on the bus is like cheering the bus driver along. And like all the people at the bus stops that he runs past are like trying to get on as quick as possible and pay their fares as quick as possible. And
Mhm.
it's absolutely hilarious, Jamie, because he's running alongside the bus, and everyone in the bus is trying to. It's just it's funny, man. It's so funny. It's not that funny, but it's a
Cool.
little bit funny. And then
And they
he
do that
gets on
joke
the
3 times. You were saying,
what?
and they do that joke like 3 times. You're saying.
Yeah, he runs past 3 bus stops and every one, and then the bus driver is like, "I can only go so fast," and he's like, "I need to stop here," and all the people on the bus are like, come on, let's do it." So right from the start, it's established that he's like one of these guys that thinks he's like really funny, but he's actually just
Mm.
quite annoying, and
Yeah.
like everyone clearly thinks this, and people on the bus are like,
Oh.
"Let's try and beat him," or whatever. So he
Mm.
does that. And then he gets on the bus. The bus driver is black, and he makes a back of the bus joke where he says to the bus driver, "A few years ago, you wouldn't be driving, you'd be sitting up the back of the bus," which is hilarious. And
That's
then
it's nice that he can joke like that. I'm sure everyone's very comfortable in that
I'm sure
situation.
they are, and all the people on the bus are kind of like, "Oh yeah, yeah." So he makes like this slightly racist joke,
Yeah.
and or actually not slightly
Slightly.
racist, very racist joke, yeah. And they all kind of are like, oh, "Okay." And then he insinuates that black people can't run far. They're very
I've never
quick.
heard that stereotype.
No, neither. He says they're very quick in sprints, but they can't run far distances.
That's very specific as
Unlike
well.
him, which
Mm.
is obviously hilarious as well. Then he goes to his favorite restaurant, and he
Mm.
jokes with the black server about rioting and looting, and he makes some slightly racist jokes to him.
Hmm.
And he's like very nice to this black waiter, but in like a racist way, where
Of
it's
course.
clear that he sees him as like one of the good ones, and he's like, "Oh, Joe,
God.
you wouldn't be out there rioting or whatever." And
Mm.
he says, "Oh, I bet they didn't loot here because it's such a shithole or something like that, like or not those words, but that kind of thing." The
Uh,
black guy doesn't own it. He just works there. It's revealed later on. But yeah,
mm.
he's kind of racist in like a not racist in like a hateful way or in like a deliberate hateful way.
Just
But
casually racist. Yeah.
yeah, it's very clear that he's incredibly casually racist.
Mm.
And at the start of the film here, so there's the black bus driver, and then there's the black guy that serves him. Then he gets to work, and the guy that's operating the lift is also black. So it's pretty clear that all the like shitty jobs are held by black people in this area or this neighborhood or
Yeah.
whatever. Then he walks into the office, and there's a classic like room of secretaries, and he says, "Sluts, sluts, all of you sluts," to the secretaries, and they're all like, "Oh, okay." Then he sexually assaults one of them, and he like grabs her
Great.
ass. He calls her Swedish, and then she's like, "Oh no, I'm Norwegian." And then he says, "Are you actually blonde?" And she's like, "Oh, no, I'm." Or she says she is, or whatever. Then he
Mm.
says that he'll pay her to walk away. He'll pay her more if she jogs away, even more if she runs away, and even more if she's actually blonde, which is hilarious.
That's
Um,
very creepy fetish. I gotta
yeah,
say.
yeah. So again, it's very clear that he thinks he's this charismatic guy, but everyone's really cringe.
Mm.
There's then it's established that the kids are quite embarrassed that he races the bus every morning, because apparently
Very fair.
all the kids at school bully them,
Mm.
because their dad races the bus.
Quite right.
He has sex with his wife once a week on a Wednesday. She tries to have sex with him that night, but he says no, it's a Monday, and he doesn't want any more kids, so they only have sex on Wednesdays.
Oh well, I mean that's the
Um,
best contraception of
and
all.
then in the middle of the night, he wakes up, and suddenly he's black. And
Well,
the reveal that he's black is he walks through the house in like shadow, so you can't tell.
mm.
And then the big reveal is there's a shot from like a toilet, the toilet's point of view, as he goes to sit down in the toilet,
Lovely.
and then he pulls down his trousers, and you see his black ass. So the second time you
Great.
see his ass, it's black, and that's
You
like
get a
right
nice
in the
cincture
center.
shot.
That's held in the center of the frame for a couple seconds, and then it cuts to
Wonderful.
him like screaming in the mirror, and he screams in the mirror, and then he says, "How now, brown cow?" And then he starts like drinking loads of water to try and not be black.
Good strat.
And then he thinks it's a nightmare about his sun lamp.
Mm.
He checks his penis, and then he says, "Oh, that's an old wives' tale."
As
And
in
then he has
like sarcastically or not.
um, like yeah, he so as in it's not got bigger. I think is the joke,
Cool. It's
and
important
he's
for me that I know the size of his penis so
yeah
that I
he
can
like lifts it
being
up, and he's
invested in the
like, I
narrative.
guess it's the same size it was before, and he's like, "Oh, that's an old wives' tale then."
Mm.
Then he has a shower to not be black. So he's tried drinking water. He has a shower for like several hours because he wakes up in the middle of the night, and he goes in the shower, and then he's still in the shower in the morning when his kids get up. So he's in the shower for hours, and the whole house is like fogged up from the shower.
think you're getting on a crafty one.
And then the kids want to watch him run out the house because for some reason, even though he races a bus, he never lets them watch him run out the house. You have to like stay inside. I don't know
Of
why.
course, it's dangerous to be
Um,
around someone who's racing a bus.
exactly. So they say to him, "Oh, we don't want to watch the bus," and then he says he's not going to work today because he's sick and he's still in the shower. So they've not seen that he's black. He's still in the shower. And then they
Yep.
say, "You mean you won't be racing the bus today?" And then he said, "Don't ever bring up the race issue again," which is another hilarious joke.
That is actually
Um,
it made me laugh.
it was quite a good one. There were quite a lot of jokes like that that really did actually make me
Any
laugh in
pun,
this one.
anything that's just like a stupidly laboured pun will just
Exactly.
appeal to
And then
me.
the kids are like, What? Okay, fine." And then they go off to school. And then he pleads to God
Mhm.
to make him not black. Then there's a funny bit where his wife comes in and is like, "Get out of the shower." He gets out of the shower. She screams and she's like, "There's a N-word in our house." And then he's
Great.
like, "No, it's me. I'm not an N-word." They use that word very liberally.
Of
They
course.
mainly say the less bad N-word that we keep mentioning, but they do also use the other one quite a
Good,
lot.
good, good, good.
He calls his wife a simp, which I found
Wait, really?
interesting. Yeah, apparently it means like a silly person.
Nice.
But
Isn't
I
it nice that
found
language
that
gets to come back?
I found that quite funny because I was just watching it and then she says something. He's like, "Don't be such a simp," and it really like took me away. But that was pretty funny.
Mm.
Then they're racist to Chinese people because his wife says, "You always did look a bit dark," and then he goes, "Pff, me dark? Have you seen your mum?" Then he talks about how her mum has like slightly slanted eyes, and
Okay.
a bunch of other racist Chinese stereotypes. Then he he calls in, oh my god, he calls in sick to work, and guess what he says to the receptionist at work?
Something racist gonna go.
He says, "I'm feeling a bit off color."
Oh.
I know, right? It's good. Then then he says, "Oh, it must be the sun lamp that I've got that's caused this." And then he says, "I'm sure this has happened before. I'll phone them up. Like I'm sure this is an issue that's happened before." And then his wife says, "Yeah, all over Africa." And they both have a little laugh at that. And then he's like, "No, this isn't funny." Um, then his wife looks at his dick and he goes, "No, it's an old wives' tale," because that joke
Mhm.
was so funny
It's
the
nice that they
first
got to
time.
do
They
they
had to do
got
it
to do the
again.
joke twice, did they?
And then of course his hair is curly because he's black now. So she
Hmm.
says, "Why don't you straighten your hair?" And he says, "I don't want my hair straightened. I want my skin straightened." Not really sure what that means because I don't think black skin is not straight. I don't really know what the point was.
Uh,
But
we all
yeah,
stumble over our words sometimes, particularly on
true,
this podcast.
true. I'm sure he was struggling. And then he gets in a taxi to the black area of town because
Mhm.
he wants to find out what skincare they use to appear more white, so that he can buy a bunch of it.
They do that in India, actually.
Do they? Well, there you
Yeah,
go.
colorism is a big deal there. Because
Apparently they do it there as well. Um,
colonialism and all that.
so he gets in a taxi, and then the driver says, "What are you doing in that house, mowing the lawn?" And he says, "No, I'm sleeping with the lady of the house," which is another hilarious race based joke.
Yeah, yeah.
Then he walks into the shop in the black area of town, and immediately the guy behind the counter puts his hands up,
Right.
as if he's been robbed, which I find a bit weird because you'd think, given that the guy behind the counter is black and he's allegedly in the black area of town, I don't really know why the shopkeeper would react in that way to a black person walking in,
Maybe they were
but
doing
he does.
colorblind casting for that one role, and then it went wrong.
Maybe,
Late to
maybe.
go back. I'm just kidding. Don't worry.
Then he rubs a bunch of creams on, and then he says, "These creams don't work. No wonder." And then he says the M word again, riot, as in like, no wonder they riot. Their creams don't work, which I don't really get. And then he goes out for a walk in the garden. Oh, I forgot what the line was. I didn't write it down. But the person next door is doing the washing, and
Hmm?
he says something about like what? Oh, he says, "What bleach do you use?" And we could use some stuff whitening in this house as well. And then she tells him, and then she like pulls apart the washing to look at him, and then she screams when he's black, and then he screams because he's black. And then there's this cut. There's a cool cut at that point, and then he's got his head in this like mold thing,
Cool.
which he doesn't really say what the point is of that.
Hmm.
And then he starts drinking a load of milk, to try and get him white. And by a load of
Of
milk, I
course.
mean like pints and pints and pints of milk.
That's the way it
Um,
works.
and then after drinking all the milk and having this mold thing in his head, he says to his wife, "Tell me the truth, but tell me I'm white." And then she very not seriously says that he's white, so he knows that he's not white.
Mm.
Um, and then there's a cool bit where like the screen starts flashing different colors as he goes more and more insane,
Mm-hmm.
and he goes really crazy. Like he hates being black. Um, and then he
Okay.
says to her, "I want all the mirrors in the house removed. That's an order from your husband, Othello," which is another funny line because of course Othello is black as well.
Yep.
Um, and then the doorbell rings and he jumps. And then his wife says, "The Ku Klux Klan never rings the bell," which is pretty
Mm-hmm.
funny. And then guess what it is that's getting delivered, Jamie?
Uh, a burning cross. Uh,
No, it's another sunbed because you see,
oh,
when he phoned up the sunbed company to complain, they said they'd send him a new one, which is, of course, the last thing he needs because he's so tan now. So
of
he physically
course.
attacks the delivery man and almost kills him.
Good. That's
Um,
very reasonable. That's
and
what
then
I
his
do.
wife tells him to get off, and the delivery man, rather than running away, or whatever, just stands there and says to his wife, "That guy needs a sun lamp, like Fred Astaire needs dancing lessons," and then casually walks out despite just being beaten within inches of his life.
It's nice that you complimented Fred Astaire, though.
It is. It was very nice of him. Then he takes a bath in milk, and while in the bath, he says "Ooga booga dooga doo." Then his wife walks in and says "Ooga booga dooga doo," and for some reason he keeps repeating that. I'm not really
That's
sure why, because it
that's like
feels
19. That's like 1890s racism.
well. It's kind of 1890s racism, and also you'd think if he was saying that that's what black people said, which I guess is the implication, you would think that he would be saying he wouldn't say it to be more white. Anyway, he takes a bath in milk, um, and then he decides the next day that he's going to go to work because he can't stay
Okay.
away from work forever. So
Yeah.
he leaves the house to race the bus as usual. And
Mm-hmm.
there's all these shots of the neighbors being really shocked when there's a black person running in the neighborhood. And they're all looking out the window like, oh, and then people on the bus are like, is that, I forgot his name already, but they're like, is that the character? What happened to him? He looks black, blah, 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 blah.
Mm.
And then as he's running, people start screaming and chasing him, shouting that he must have stolen something. And then he gets arrested, and he has to prove that he's not stolen anything by trying on his shoes to prove that they're his shoes.
Okay. Natural.
Um, And then the bus driver comes and they're like, "Oh, I never noticed you were black," because the bus driver is black. And then he goes to the same cafe thing, and that the guy in there is like, "I never noticed you were black." Yeah, so that was kind of interesting. Then he said, "I'm not black," and he's going to get the restaurant shut down as a homosexual hangout, which I guess was banned at the
Um,
time.
yeah.
Um, and then there's a hilarious bit. He goes back into the office and no one's really interested in him. But the secretary that he had sexually assaulted before is now interested in him because he's black, the Norwegian
For
one.
God's sake.
So she
Okay.
gives him she gives him her number, puts it in his chest pocket, and then he goes in to see his boss. And then his boss says, "Oh, you've suntanned a bit too much. You've got a great tan,"
Cool.
which lifts his spirits a bit because he's like, "Oh, people just think I've had a good tan." But then the boss phones his optician and is like, "I think these tinted contact lenses you gave me are a bit dark," because obviously he thinks that he's seeing it
Yeah,
darker.
yeah. I get it. It's
You
cute
get
gag.
it. So that perks him up a lot because he's like, "Oh, people are just gonna think it's a tan," because he'd been quite depressed before that. But then he goes for lunch at a club, and he's not allowed into the club because he's black.
Okay, yeah.
And
I mean that would still be true today, even.
yeah, true.
Some suck.
Um, and he
Other
starts.
than the fact that they're objectively cool, and I want them. I want to be in one.
You want to be in a club?
Yeah, if
That you
they
want to be in a club that excludes black people,
not one of those ones. Um,
right?
I'd like to be in a racially inclusive club, although I don't know if
Wait?
these.
Are there still ones that exclude people?
You hear about country clubs, like
Oh
you
my
know,
god.
they don't do it explicitly, but like you know.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
pretty fucked. Well, anyway, this one is very explicit. It's got like a little statue outside of like a stereotypical black person with like a big cross through it.
right.
So
Statue.
anyway, in the process of not getting allowed in and trying to argue that he's white, he starts a race riot
Okay,
where a
that's
bunch
fair.
of black people start shouting from the street at the guy that's not letting him in.
Hmm.
And then he's arrested by the police, and he jokes about police brutality, which
It's a
is
fun
obviously
thing.
absolutely hilarious because, of course, they're not being brutal to him at all. They just like arrest him normally, And they just take him to his boss's office. Like he doesn't actually get arrested or anything. And that's the second time that he jokes about police brutality, despite not actually getting brutalized. So that was a bit on the edge. And then his boss realizes that there's a big advantage to having a black salesman because they
Yeah.
don't sell insurance to black people with white salesmen, so they can sell insurance to all the black people. And
Cool.
then the boss says, "Why don't you run back to your office?" And he says, "I can't run anywhere because they'll arrest me because they'll think I've stolen something." So the boss is like, "Oh, why don't you walk back to your office then?"
Right.
So then he goes to the doctor's office, and the doctor's like, maybe it's somewhere in your lineage that there's black people, which I thought was interesting because I feel like you still see this nowadays sometimes when people do these tests to like find out their history, and then they realize that they're like part black. Have you ever seen those ones
Oh yeah.
where it's like a white supremacist? So it kind of felt like that. That was kind of interesting.
Hmm.
And it turns out that his middle name is Jefferson, I think. And the
Okay.
doctor's like, a lot of slaves chose presidents as their middle names, so maybe your ancestors are
That's undeniable
whatever.
proof, I guess.
Which doesn't really make sense because
No, it's
why
his
would
middle name. If it was his surname, then like yeah, but
well it's more why would he turn black suddenly? Like if he
yeah.
was black, then he'd just be black. Anyway, he's
Oh
black.
yeah, that was so ridiculous. I was taking it as a given.
Yeah,
So
it was weird. Anyway, he he gets home, and his wife accidentally serves him fried chicken and watermelon without thinking about it. And then he says to her in a joking tone, "Watermelon doesn't taste good to me unless it's stolen." Which is another just hilarious race joke.
hmm
And then he stops racing buses and becomes quite depressed.
good. It's nice to see that he's improved as a person.
Yeah, and the main thing up until this point that he's been suspicious of is he's been using soy sauce on his skin. He's got this like his own made up formula that he
Ah,
uses. Um, and then the doctor says that soy sauce is more apt to make you Oriental than the N word. And then the doctor says, "I'm gonna have to stop being your doctor," and he changes him over to a doctor that is black and says, "You might have heard of this guy. He's of your race." So
right.
he gets his doctor changed, and then he gets fired and has to work at a landfill site. And then when he gets home from that, the neighbors ask him to move out, and he manages to barter up from 50k to 100k. So they're going to buy his house from him basically,
Great.
because they're worried that having a black person in the neighborhood will bring down property prices.
Of course.
So they pay him 100k to move out. And then he says that he was going to sell the house anyway because the neighborhood was a bit Jewish. And then
Sorry.
the wife says,
You're
no,
so
it's
bad.
these are all jokes, Jamie. All the quotes I'm reading were bits that I found funny, although a lot of them are also very edgy. Um, and then the wife says that she's going to leave. She sends the kids off to her sister, and then she says that she's going to leave as well unless he tries to appear more white.
Yeah.
And then she suggests that he dyes his hair blonde. Then he says, "You know what I'd look like with blonde hair? A grilled cheese sandwich,"
Great.
which is pretty funny. And then he tries to have sex with his wife, but she's like, "No, I'm really flustered about this whole thing. I'm not going to do it." So then, of course, he phones the Norwegian secretary and has sex with her. And that
That's
sex scene
very
was
likable.
incredible. It
Was
was
it
like
like
the
super gratuitous?
no, no, it wasn't actually. It was like the camera was like moving from above, and they were both under the covers, and the covers were like going absolutely mental, like
Of course.
like super exaggerated, with like the really like sexy music in the background. And then it turns out that she's actually racist because she only has sex with black people, and she'll never have sex with a white man again. And he's like, "Well, you're racist as well." So then he leaves, and then she shouts after him that he's being accused of rape. She's like, "You raped me." And then his wife leaves to Indianapolis as well as his kids. Um, and then he gets fired at that point. Did I already say that? Yeah, because he
No.
works in a landfill. So he gets fired because he's been giving advice to black people rather than selling them insurance policies, and he's cost the company money. Um, so he sets up his own insurance agency. He goes to like an all black bar. Some people get arrested in there, and
Okay.
then basically the film ends with him just accepting that he's black and his wife's left him. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
Wait, how does he turn back?
What?
How does he turn
No,
back?
no, no. He doesn't turn back. He's just
Oh,
black now.
I was
So his
assuming.
his wife his wife's left him, and he's set up his own thing, and he's just black.
Oh,
So
that's.
there's no explanation for how he turned black overnight.
I mean, to be fair, that's probably a more progressive way to go about it, I guess, rather than like, oh great, the nightmare's over.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, but he's white and then he's black.
yeah, that's not what I was expecting.
No.
I'm processing it.
Well, there you go. That was my incredibly rushed go through of
I like
Watermelon
listening
Man.
to it. Sorry, I'm tired, and
No, no, it's fine.
so I
I,
wasn't
I had
talking too
a I
much.
had a lot of notes. So
Thank you.
yeah, I read all the funny quotes. There were a lot of funny quotes in it. I
So
would
what
I
was
would put it as watch it if it's on.
better?
Maybe watch it if it's free. It
Ah,
kind of depends. It's an
cool.
interest. I don't really know who it's for. I don't really know if it's for like a white audience or a black audience. At the time, obviously. Now,
Yeah,
anyone watches anything, but like, I can't really tell if it's
who it
who
was
it, who
supposed to be
it's
marketed
for
towards.
really. But it's
Right.
interesting. It's interesting to see race relations at that time from the point of view of like black people, but
Mm,
in this like very comedic way. It was quite
yeah,
funny.
cool.
It definitely had a lot of edgy stuff in it by
Mm,
today's standards and maybe even by the time standards.
yeah.
But yeah, it was it was an interesting film. I kind of wish we'd done this one. I mean, I think it's probably a good job we didn't because I don't know. Obviously I just rushed through my notes there. I don't know how much we'd actually be able to discuss individual
Maybe we would have been able to
things.
talk about something. I'm glad we did Out of Towners. It was a
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. So I definitely preferred this one to Out of Towners
Anyway,
for sure.
um, next week, I didn't discuss this with you beforehand, but we don't have any choice in the matter because there's only one film that's available on streaming. We are doing an
Oh yeah,
Italian horror film, so everyone can look forward to that
maybe I might find another film.
if you can. That's the only one that was there. So
Okay, cool. Sounds
uh,
good.
yeah, we haven't done a foreign film yet on this. It'll be fun.
That's true. That's true. Well, all of them have been foreign films. They've all been American.
Uh, Too Late the Hero was halfway British.
British American. Yeah, that's
You
true.
fool. Uh,
Oh man, I
anyway,
feel wiped out after that
yeah,
run
that
through.
was a fun episode, my boy.
That was. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Discuss?
Not really. Nah, I'm pretty good. I think
Yeah,
we've covered it. I'm
I think
sorry.
so.
I'm tired. Uh,
My throat's kind of sore after that.
yeah, went on. See, 3 movies is just it's too much
It's
for
too much.
our
Let's stick to it.
two
Let's
of
stick
us.
to one in
We're sticking
future.
to one in future. We,
But
we we pushed our limits and we found out where they
oh,
were. Oh,
something I didn't say. Do you know what
yeah.
else the director of the Out of Towners made?
Neil Simon.
No,
Oh, do you do?
Arthur Hiller
Oh, oh
was the
shoot!
director.
I did know this, and yet now I don't. What was it?
He made a National Lampoon's film.
Hmm.
Not any of the famous. I don't know how many there are, but I didn't recognize it. And he made Beverly Hills Cop 3.
Yeah, that's everyone's favorite one.
Is it? I've not seen any of them.
Oh, but no one likes Beverly Hills Cop 3.
Well, there you
It's
go.
like,
So he made it. Cool.
mhm.
All right. Yeah, I
Cool.
think let's end the episode before before I lose my voice completely.
Night night, everyone. If you're watching
Night,
this,
night, everyone. Well, it could be late by the time this goes up because I'll need to edit it and process it and all
if
that.
you're watching it during the day, then fuck you.
Well, surely people watch it as soon as it goes up and not any other time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't. All right.
All right. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.